I stiff-armed God. It
Mm.
was like I wanted him close enough to where I could have him if I needed him, but I was
Mhm.
angry at him as well.
Welcome back to Living the Grace Life. I'm your host, Jennifer Sakata, and you've made your way to the corner of real grace for your real life. Real life today takes us to those panicked moments. We utter desperate prayers, wondering, is God even listening? Where's God's grace when God's answers aren't at all what we asked for? And why bother praying anyway? My guest today is Rachel Wojo, author, public speaker, friend, and fellow podcast host. Her passion is helping women find strength and hope in everyday situations. Rachel's journey includes losing her mother to leukemia, her father to illness, and her special needs adult daughter to a rare neurologically degenerative disease. Rachel's recently written Desperate Prayers, Embracing the Power of Prayer in Life's Darkest Moments. And we are going to dig into that today in part one of our two-part conversation together. But mostly, Rachel wants you to know she is crazy in love with Matt, mom to 6 here on earth and 2 in heaven. Rachel, welcome to Living the Grace Life.
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I am thrilled on so many levels to be here with you today.
Oh, this is great. Friends, I walked into a podcasting breakfast where Rachel was the host for the Speak Up conference 3 years ago in response to a desperate prayer I had prayed long ago, asking God, is podcasting in my future? I had no idea, fast forward 3 years later, that we would be sitting having a conversation together and exploring the topic of grace and prayer. Rachel, I remember seeing you and distinctly thinking, that woman is a powerhouse for God. And in the
Oh,
time that I've gotten to know you, what I've discovered is that the source of that power is the treasure of Jesus in an
yes.
earthen vessel that has endured tremendous heartache and pain, but come out on the other side with hope we all want to live into. So it is just an absolute privilege to be able to welcome you here.
Oh, thank you again. I believe 100% what you said is true. That if anyone ever sees me and sets an opinion of positivity in any way, whether they think I'm a powerhouse or think I'm like the most gentle human being that ever walked the planet, whatever they see, I hope they see Jesus because it has been a long journey. I
Mm,
think there were years where I didn't reflect that. I'm
mm.
sure you can think back on your own life of times where you wanted to figure out how to follow Jesus well, but your life wasn't reflecting his love or his light. So I'm thankful for
Well,
the
we are
opportunity.
all about grace here, so that fits perfectly. Do tell us a little bit about you, who you are and how you first came to experience God's grace at work in your life.
So when I was a 6-year-old little girl,
Mm,
I went down the aisle and asked the pastor at my church if could get baptized because I had asked Jesus in my heart. I
mm,
was so shy and so quiet. I basically hid underneath his suit coat. And he had me face the audience and tell everybody that I accepted Jesus and wanted to get baptized. Well, my parents had no idea that I was going to
wow.
walk down the aisle. And so at the end, my dad takes me to the back of the service, the back of the auditorium, and he says, have you been saved? I'm a
Mm.
6-year-old little girl. I have
Right. What
no
does that mean?
idea what saved means. And I say to him, I don't know what that means, but I asked Jesus in my heart. And
Mm.
I just remember him smiling really big and saying, that's what it means.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
so that was the beginning of my Christian journey. But as a teenager, I was very devoted. I'm a rule follower for the most part. And so I was very devoted to reading my Bible and praying and attending church with my family, of
Mm.
course. I went to Christian college and graduated from Christian college and went on to teach in a Christian school. And I married a preacher boy who was interviewing for positions as a pastor.
Mm.
We did several
Wow.
candidacies, and each one, he declined the position. And I didn't really understand what
Hmm.
was happening, but I did feel like something was dreadfully wrong. It wasn't until we had been married for 5 years that I discovered that for 4 of the 5 years he had been having an affair. And so
Oh, Rachel.
I stopped teaching in the Christian
Mm,
school. I went on to different work in that interim of
mm,
time, but I never dreamed that I would wind up in a place where I did as a single mom of a special needs child.
mm,
God had given us a little girl during our 5 years together, and she was a beautiful little girl with bouncy pigtails and turned heads wherever she went. And I just remember finding myself as a single mom with a special needs child saying, what in the world has
mm.
happened? The white picket fence dream was gone.
Yeah.
And I found myself chasing after God harder than ever because I wanted more than just the faith of
Mm,
my parents. I wanted to know that He was real, that He was with me, and that this wasn't a farce, that the love and the rejection
mm,
that I did not have any longer from my ex-husband, I needed to know that there was something more, a deeper love, that
mm,
God had a plan and a purpose for my life. And so I pursued him. I
mm,
pursued him very heavily. The Lord brought Matt into my life not long
mm.
after that. And so we married, and we've been married now for 25 years. We'll be celebrating
Oh,
25th
congratulations. Oh,
wedding
that's
anniversary this year, but
wonderful.
hopefully that gives you a nutshell of an idea of the grace of God that I've encountered over
Mm.
the many years of trying to serve Him and pursue Him. He pursues me.
It does. And what intrigues me about what you've just shared is that many of us with that kind of blindsiding heartache, disappointment, and just incredible, not what I signed up for. I think many of us would have run in the opposite direction of God,
Mhm.
blaming God, silencing ourselves, and separating ourselves from Him. But you did the exact opposite. You
And
ran in His direction.
yeah, I will tell you, Jennifer, I think a lot of us think of that scenario of running to God or running away from God. And I'll be honest, I can't say that I ever tried to run away from God. It was too much, my faith was
Mm,
too much a part of my DNA from the time that
okay.
I was a child to really run away from Him. But I did what a lot of people do. I stiff armed God. It
Mm,
was like I wanted him close enough to where I could have him if I needed him, but I was
mm,
angry at him as well. And so I would keep him at a distance.
mm.
And I think a lot of people do that.
Absolutely. And I think as I'm thinking about this, Rachel, that's why, as I've read through your book, Desperate Prayers, that's why you are the person to have written that book
Mm.
because you have lived what you're writing about. But I've had seasons as well where I am just so distraught. In fact, to be quite honest, in a bit of a challenging season right now in our extended family's life. And we are all given two choices essentially. We can either draw near to God
Mhm.
or we can move in the opposite direction.
Yeah. I think there is a tension where we have one leg in one part of that running and one leg in the other part.
That
And
is such a
one
good
side is
description.
saying, don't run. And the other side is saying, run
I'm out
away.
of here.
And yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So there's this awful tension of
Mm,
living in wanting to choose what's right, but still
mm,
feeling like, man, I'm just heartbroken. I'm
mm,
frustrated. I'm have all these emotions that I can't cope with.
mm. And I think that's where the desperation comes in, right?
Yes.
It puts us into this place where we know we have to respond, but we feel almost paralyzed in how best to respond.
Right.
So you
Exactly.
you grew up in a strong Christian home. You grew up with, if you will, the picture perfect family, which I'm sure you had issues as well, but you grew up with an incredibly strong foundation, and yet you were not spared what you called the big D's of life.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about that and how desperate prayers came to be. What prompted you to write desperate prayers?
I do talk about the big D's: divorce, depression, discouragement, death, all of those words that just infiltrate our lives when we have challenging
Mm,
circumstances that
mhm.
happen to us, whether that's disease or has to do with relationship, whatever it is. I really believe that we arrive at a point to where we have to choose in that desperation, in that rock bottom place, we have to choose if we're going to cry out to God or not. And
Mm,
it's a really pivotal choice because so many of us, we get there and we think so much negativity. The
yeah.
devil wants us to do anything but cry out to God. And so we have this array of thoughts that comes across our mind like, God doesn't want to hear from me, or
Mm,
I have to get my act together first,
oh, yeah.
or why would he do this to me? How could he want to hear from me? Why should I even pray to him? Some people say their idea is God must be in control, so there's no reason for me to pray to him because he's going to do what he's going to do
Mm.
mentality.
Oh, gosh.
And
Yeah.
I've just heard so many of those different types of scenarios. And I just know there's this critical moment where we get to choose in that rock bottom place. Do I want to turn to God or not? And can I pray to him or
Mm,
not?
mhm,
So
mhm.
making that choice, I feel like, is where most of us struggle. We wrestle with that choice. And we look at Bible characters in the Bible, we see time after time that same kind of different rock bottom place. You have Hannah, who was dealing with infertility. You have Hagar, who was dealing with rejection. You have David, who is dealing with the loss of a child. And on it goes with the
Yeah.
circumstances that these Bible characters had and endured that we can relate to today. They're still the same kinds of circumstances that we have today. So when I looked at my own life and said, what do I do?
Mm.
How do I do this? And I just began to have open, honest conversations with God. They weren't very
I
pretty.
appreciate your honesty there.
They weren't
Sometimes more
exactly
yelling than
eloquent.
praying, maybe?
They weren't eloquent. They were very flawed and
Mm,
open and honest and raw and real. And then I realized that's exactly where God wanted me to be. He
mhm,
wasn't looking for a perfect conversation, He was looking for an honest
mm,
and willing and humble heart.
mm,
And so as I began to experience the deepening of my prayer life through repetitively going to him and having conversations with him, then I just discovered that there's so much depth to having an open, honest relationship
mm.
with God. And I wanted other people to begin to
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
that same kind of opening and deepening of their prayer life.
Mm. Each of your chapters has what you call a three-word desperate prayer. And what I love about them is they are about as simple as they could be and
Mm,
about as raw and honest as they could be. Because I think there are many of us who are hurting and can relate to feeling like God isn't listening,
mm,
that he doesn't understand our circumstances or our situation. And so you have put together these desperate prayers as an invitation to sit with God in some of the most vulnerable, hard spaces in our own hearts. So,
yeah.
would you share with us a few of those prayers? I, of course, want to encourage people to purchase your book and be able to read them, but share with us a little sampling of some of those prayers and maybe pick one or two that have been especially grace rich for you.
There are 15 chapters in the book, and so there are 15 three-word
Mm,
prayers. Some of them at the beginning of the book, I'll just say, God help me, God hold me, God fill me, God reassure me. The first word is God because we're addressing Him in our prayer. The last word is me because I'm teaching people how to pray for themselves.
Mm.
There are books on intercessory prayer. I believe in praying for other people, but so many of us struggle to pray for other people because we don't even know how to
Oh,
pray for
yes.
ourselves.
You are
We
so
haven't
right.
put the oxygen mask on ourselves first in order to be able to pray for other people. We haven't learned how to talk to God. And so
Yeah.
that's why that last word is me. And then in the middle, sandwiched between God and me, is just one active verb,
Mm.
and it's asking God to do something for me.
Mhm.
So each one of those verbs, whether it's help or hold or fill or reassure, it's something that I need. And the problem with a lot of us, Jennifer, that I've found is that when we're in desperate places, we can't string words together. We need
Mhm.
simple, short, three-word prayers to
Mhm.
remember. And so I found that those three-word prayers can really solidify your heart and just give you something very simple to hold on to when
Mhm.
you're in a desperate situation.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so often I hear people ask quite frequently, I don't know how to pray the way that you pray. I just don't even know where to begin. But what you're offering us here is a very simple formula. Start with God, finish with us, acknowledging that we have a need, and as you called it, that action verb in the middle. That is about as simple as prayer can be for us. So I love that invitation. So, you also, we're both Bible teachers. And one of the things I love about your story is that you choose 15 Bible characters who essentially live into these desperate prayers we're invited to pray. I think I had asked you this earlier before our conversation of one character in particular who speaks grace to you. And you mentioned Jacob, who prayed
Yeah,
for a blessing and God gave him a limp. Where is the grace in that? That just does not seem very gracious to me. And yet, there's grace in there.
for sure. I don't know that many people ever even think about how Jacob was wrestling
Mm.
and equate that. Many people realize, okay, yes, the Bible story goes on to say that Jacob's hip was wrenched out of socket. And there's a historical moment where then Israelites say, okay, because Jacob had his hip wrenched out of socket, we are not even going to eat
Hmm.
the hip portion
Right.
of a lamb when it's slaughtered. That's how extended this issue became. It went from just being a
Mm.
physical ailment for Jacob to being memorialized
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
this process of deciding what meat we're going to eat as a result of the lamb being slaughtered. And so you think through that biblically. Jacob's wrestling with God. He begs God, says, I don't want to lead you to leave without blessing me.
Mm.
And God says, okay. He's blessed. Then he wrenches his hip out of socket, and Jacob walks with a limp the rest of his life. When you get
Mhm.
over into the New Testament, in the Hall of Faith, Hebrews 11, then we have a story about Jacob that explains a little bit more to us. It says, Jacob worshiped leaning on his
Oh,
staff. Okay,
yes.
so we know that he was still hobbling along all these many years later. And so when you think about that, you think, gosh, all those years,
Mm.
Jacob had a limp. He had to walk with a staff. He had a hip problem from there out.
Mm.
Why did God do that to him?
Yeah.
And if you want to logically think about why God did it to him, it was grace. It was grace. Grace was the reason because if you look at Jacob's life before that wrestling moment, what was it like?
Mm.
Every time Jacob was afraid, his natural reaction was fear. And he ran away from his home. He ran away from Esau because he thought he was going to kill him. He ran away from
Mm.
Laban after he labored with him and had two of his daughters became his wives. He ran away from there. All of his life, he's running.
Yeah.
Multiple times in scripture before we get to this point where God and Jacob are wrestling, Jacob is a runner. It's his natural reaction, his natural recourse of fear.
Mm.
And so I think one of the reasons why, and this is just perception, it may not be entirely scriptural, but I think one of the reasons why God gave him a limp was so that he would no longer be able to run and
Oh,
he would need to
yes.
lean
Mm.
on the chest of his heavenly Father.
Oh,
And I think that's so many times what the Lord does for us in our own lives. We ask him for blessing. He gives us a circumstance we're not
mm.
crazy about. And then we say, "Why, Lord?" And then back to us, he says, "I want to keep you as close to me as possible so that you can learn what you need to learn." And when I look at my own life, Jennifer, I know
Yeah.
that I would not be have the kind of character, not that I've arrived by any means, but I would not have the kind of character or the heart to seek God if I had not had a special needs child who kept me tethered to Jesus.
Mm.
And while so many people would say that was a negative, it was not a negative in my life. Taylor was a gift. And she did keep me tethered to Jesus, so much so that I feared that when she was gone, I would forget how much I needed the Lord. And so I begged God and asked God, now that she's in heaven, don't let me forget how much I need you. Keep me just as tethered to you as I was when the pressure of needing you every day was more evident in my life. Because honestly, we all need Jesus that much every day,
Every
right?
day.
Regardless of
Every
our
day.
circumstances.
Mm.
So I don't know if Jacob's story is just one of those that I'm a wrestler. I like to
Mm.
think
Mhm.
things out and work things through and go in and out with them, or because I have a tendency to run at the sign
Mm.
of trouble and stay away from it like he did. But for whatever reason, his limp caused me to recognize that sometimes God's protection looks like a limp.
Yeah, I think that's incredible insight, Rachel, especially in those darker spaces where we feel God's absence and don't recognize that it's actually the exact opposite. Those are those spaces when he bends near and leans in closer than we didn't
Yes.
even know was possible.
Yes. And then when we have experienced that, like you're describing, we recognize then that there's this holy privilege
Mm.
in those moments. And we would never trade that for anything. And we recognize the fellowship of the suffering. That means that we have this opportunity to enter into a more intimate place with the Lord than we would have without the suffering. To
Mm.
experience God's peace when it's unexplainable is a most precious gift.
It is. And you say something in your book that on paper sounds and seems like an absolute irony that praying in a panic creates a powerful pathway to peace.
Mm.
I would never have put all of those P words in one sentence because they just don't seem to be partners, to use another P word. But help us understand that. What does that look like? How do we believe
Mm,
that's true? And then how do we actually get to the praying part where that
right.
intimacy grows that you're talking about?
Yeah. Believing it's true is a choice that we take by faith. That part really is a decision that we make to choose whether we believe God or not, whether we believe who he says he is or not, and that he will do what he says he will do. So, do we believe his promises? And will he act on them? Do we trust him to act on them? So I think praying in a panic, the first part of that is just literally remembering to turn to God. So many of us, we get
Mm.
panicked and we collapse and we forget that prayer is our lifeline and we have that opportunity to cry out to him. And then the way that it opens up the pathway is because it's not us after all that we have the power. It's God's power. We're just saying, admitting
Mm,
that surrender and recognizing that, hey, Lord, I need more
mm,
than what is available to me. It's got to be outside of me because I have no control in this situation.
yeah.
And so those things that drive us to our knees are wonderful things, because when we get to the other side, sometimes not even on this planet, but in heaven, we will understand that the things that took us to our knees are actually the things that opened us up to understanding God's power and his peace more than ever. And so, if we want that peace, we have to be willing to take the step of saying, Lord, this is beyond me.
Mm,
I need you. I need your help. I need your filling. I need your reassurance,
yeah.
whatever particular part of it is needed. Just admitting that to him is the first step. And then growing in it is just repetitive, reminding yourself to continually do it over and over again. And I talk a lot about ways that we can remind ourselves to pray, but I
Mm,
think that so many of us think it has to be perfect. For the longest time, I had on my desk a note that said, drop prayer perfectionism. Stop
mm,
thinking that it has to be certain words.
of course.
Enjoys words.
Mhm.
Then it can be very easy to think that the words are what hold the power. And the
Oh,
words are not what hold the power.
mm,
God has the power. All he's looking for is a willing heart. So remembering to go to him is the tough part. And I think when we integrate prayer with our daily life and just consider God to be the friend that he is, who's accessible to us
mm,
throughout the day, then we can develop that relationship. But starts with just that first little remembering to turn to God when you need him. But then developing the relationship is continuously
yeah.
turning back to him. I often tell people some of the strange prayer habits that I have that might sound odd to someone else. Every day when I wash my hands, I pray and ask for forgiveness
Oh,
because I'm washing my hands. It's a natural
mhm,
connection to, Lord, as this water and this soap is washing over my hands. If there's anything that I've done, I
mm,
want to keep a short account with you. So if there's anything that I've done, and sometimes I'll know what I've done. I just lost my temper.
mhm,
Lord, help me.
yeah.
And so having that
Mm,
short account with God, keeping a short account with God throughout the day
mm,
makes it a lot easier to be yielded to him,
mm,
right? Makes it a lot easier to surrender even when things come our way that we're not excited about or not happy about. I feel like prayer
mm,
in those small spaces, so to speak,
yeah.
speaks so much louder to our hearts than when we're maybe hearing the latest church pontification.
Mm,
And not that there's anything wrong with liturgies.
mhm.
I just think that sometimes we get stuck thinking prayer can only be one way.
Yeah, that's spot on. I think that's exactly right. And the experience of so many people, which is why here at Living the Grace Life, every fourth Tuesday is what I call Grace Prayer Tuesday, where we learn to pray through the scriptures, and they're intended to be very simple, allow the scriptures to lead us into prayer. For those of us who feel like the words are going to come out wrong, or like prayer perfectionism, when all God is asking of us is to come near, to be present, and allow Him to be the one who supplies the power. Well, Rachel, this has been a terrific start to our two-part conversation. And I can't wait for our listeners to come back next week to hear more about your beloved Taylor and her homecoming to Jesus several years ago now, and also to hear the story of God's miraculous provision for your family through a little yellow envelope under your green balance beam. So, friends, be sure and tuck back in with us. Rachel, tell my listeners where they can connect with you and find all the things Desperate Prayers and Rachel Wojo.
Thank you for asking.
Mhm.
So, anything about Desperate Prayers can be found at desperateprayers.com. That is the simplest, shortest way to find
That's
what you
easy.
need. You can get it on Amazon, of course, and Christian books. Wherever you buy books, you can get it.
That's great. Thank you. And I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes so that you can be in touch with Rachel.
Yeah, and
Rachel,
and
oh, go
I
ahead.
I want to offer one more thing. I just was thinking about for the person who's listening today and they're saying, gosh, I don't even know if I could start with a book because I'm in a really hard place. I
Mm,
have a free class that's available at desperateprayers.com as well. And it's how to be a prayer warrior for your family in dark times. So if you just click on the button there that says take the free prayer class, I
mm,
think that's a great starting point for anyone who's listened today and says, I'm just not ready to read a book. But if
yeah.
you could use just a little bit of guidance and sit down and listen to about a 30-minute class, then that resource is available to you.
What a wonderful offering. Thank you. I love that. Thank you so much for that very generous offer. Thank you again, Rachel, for your time and especially for your vulnerability. We're talking about some really hard things today. Prayer is not an easy subject for a lot of us for a lot of reasons and with many layers. So we appreciate your willingness to lead us along a path of desperate prayers and the power of God that's present with us in it.
Thank you so much for the privilege. I'm honored and appreciate everything that you're doing.
I want to go back to something Rachel said in our conversation. Ultimately, we have to decide when we're in the middle of crisis whether we're going to turn to God or not. It really is that simple. And I love this beautiful offering of 3-word prayers. God, help me. God, see me. God, rescue me. God, heal me. With the simplicity of 3 words, we can choose to cry out to God and know that He is listening, even if we don't get the answer we want. Thanks so much for joining our conversation today. I am truly grateful for your presence here. If today's episode has helped you to grow in grace or equipped you to pray these desperate prayers, then would you share this episode with a friend? As always, you can find me at jennifersakata.com or on Instagram at jennifersakata or on Facebook at jennifersakata.author. Until next time, remember to live the grace life generously, friend. Grace for you, grace for them.